I'm 45, the kind of guy who alphabetizes the spice rack and knows which Costco line moves fastest because I've watched enough to make a chart. Project manager by trade, list maker by temperament. Married 20 years. 2 kids. Emma, 19, doing community college and barista shifts. Max, 14, varsity soccer and the kind of appetite that eats the leftovers you were thinking about. We live in a quiet cul-de-sac where trash day is religion and every house has a flag for a team that breaks their heart in the playoffs. If you'd asked me 6 months ago what could still surprise me, I would have said a lower cable bill. Then my wife joined a book club. It was harmless at first. Paperbacks with watercolor covers, photos of cheese boards, captions about self-care with my ladies. The club met on Tuesdays in someone's living room, then moved to a wine bar because ambience, then to a co-working loft downtown because the lighting was good for Instagram. My wife bought a blazer the color of pomegranate and posted boomerangs of clinking glasses with the same 3 hashtags every time. I drove her the first night and told her to text if she needed a ride. She came home smelling like pepper and lilac and fell asleep like someone who'd found a new version of herself and liked it. Then the Tuesdays bled into Thursdays. Then Wednesdays. I'm not a suspicious man. I'm a patterns man. The card statement started leaving breadcrumbs. A florist? No flowers at home. A second wine bar across town. A receipt for a day rate at a motel off the interstate tucked between dry cleaning and pet food. The people at the hardware store say when the only tool you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. The only tool I had was trust, and it was bouncing off something solid. The night everything turned came like any other. Max had practice late. Emma was on a closing shift. I was on the couch with a game on mute and a bowl of cereal because I am my own man. My wife said she was at book club planning. The Ring app chimed, motion at the driveway. I glanced and saw a white cargo van pull in. No logo, no ladder rack, just plain white and familiar in a way that crawled under my skin. A man stepped out wearing a cap and work pants with knee-pad pockets. He didn't look at the camera. He walked straight to the side gate and let himself into the backyard like he'd been told where the latch sticks. I stood up fast enough to feel it in my knee. I didn't run outside. I turned off the kitchen light and watched through the glass. The patio motion lights flared on. I heard the slider whisper open. I heard her voice bright, the way she gives tours of our hydrangeas in June. I heard his low, close. I stood there for a whole minute and felt 2 things at once. The sick slosh of dread and a calm that made everything sharp. Then I flipped the kitchen light, threw my reflection onto the glass, and slid the door open. He was about my age, forearms like he lifts more than latte foam, the kind of face you'd trust to tile a bathroom. He didn't posture. He put his hands where I could see them, which is a skill learned somewhere you don't want to ask about. He said, "I'm Rick," like we were about to exchange contractor bids. I said my name and then said, "You're leaving." He measured the space between us, then nodded and walked past me the way a man does when he wants to keep all his bones. My wife and I talked in the kitchen because that's where people do surgery when they can't afford anesthesia. She said Rick did floors for Jess from book club, then someone else from book club, then ours. They texted about stain colors and baseboards and then started texting about everything else. She said it got out of hand, which is what people say when they want the language to do the apologizing. I asked if she loved him. She said she didn't know. That answer is a door cracked open with a foot in it. The next morning I made 2 appointments. One with a counselor, one with a family lawyer. When the pipes burst, you call a plumber. When the house is on fire, you call 911. When your marriage has a hole you can stick your head through, you call people who understand paperwork. The lawyer told me not to move out, to document costs, to keep my voice low, to let the facts pile themselves into a shape the court would recognize. The counselor told us the first rule is no contact with the third person, not even to say goodbye, not even to return a sander, not even to clarify misunderstandings. I watched my wife nod and saw stubbornness sit down behind her eyes anyway. We went separate bedrooms in the same house. Emma noticed right away because 19-year-olds are not dumb. Max pretended he didn't and started emptying the dishwasher without being asked because 14-year-olds are not heartless. I ran the ugly math on my health with a doctor who treats me like a spreadsheet and passed those tests. I took the dog on long walks and let him lead because control had become a thing I didn't trust myself with. On day 8, my wife posted a photo from a noon, planning lunch. Olives, crackers, paperbacks fanned like a hand of cards. At 3 p.m. The driveway camera watched a white van arrive as calmly as a package. I didn't go outside. I called my lawyer and described the scene. She said divorce is feeling and record-keeping, and if I wanted the second part to serve the first, I should not do anything that would make a judge ask what my problem is. When my wife came home, I put my phone on the table with the clip paused on the van in perfect profile. She stared at it like it could reverse itself. She said she'd gone to tell him it was over. I told her you don't end a thing by opening a gate. We were so calm we might have been standing in a museum reading plaques. We tried counseling again. The therapist was a woman who looked like she could talk a tornado into sitting for tea. She asked us to say what we wanted. I said I wanted honesty and quiet and a timeline that didn't insult me. My wife said she wanted to feel chosen. The therapist said, chosen people don't keep backup plans. My wife crumpled into tears that sounded like 16 and 30 and 45 all at once. I didn't put an arm around her. I listened. There is a point at which comfort is a lie. We told the kids the truth in age-appropriate slices. Emma's face went hard, then soft. She said, "Are we okay for tuition?" Because she is already a parent in her own head. I said yes because I'd done the math while watching soccer practice in my car. Max asked if the dog was staying. I said yes because I'd already checked our county's rules about who keeps the pet when both names are on the vet paperwork. He nodded like a general approving a plan. Days turned into weeks. The house felt like an airport. Everyone rolling a suitcase to a different gate. No one sure where to make eye contact. My wife kept trying to curate normal. Pancakes on Saturday. A scented candle that made the living room smell like a pine tree that shops at high-end stores. I appreciated the effort like you appreciate a kid's art. It's heartfelt and also not what the wall needs. Rick's wife found me on Facebook through mutual book club connections, which is a modern sentence I never thought I'd say. She messaged and asked if she could call, and I said yes because the least we can do is talk like adults while the roof caves in. Her name is Dana. 2 kids in elementary school. She sounded like someone reading instructions out loud while trying not to cry. We traded facts and promised not to turn our kids into referees. She sent screenshots. I sent an invoice from a motel with room numbers that could double as a bad tattoo. I didn't want revenge or friendship. I wanted a picture that stopped changing every time I blinked. I filed for legal separation first because my lawyer said it's a way to put numbers and boundaries in black and white while you decide if you still have a marriage or just a habit. We sorted bank accounts and made rules like diplomats. I paid the mortgage because I always had. She took the utilities because she wanted a peace that felt like responsibility. We alternated who slept where when one of us needed a full night without ghost footsteps. I stopped leaving my phone face up on the table because I no longer felt the need to stage innocence. There was a version of this where I stayed and punished us both. Another where I left with a duffel bag and paid for it later in a judge's raised eyebrow. The road I picked was boring and lined with receipts. We mediated. We divided. We made lists on yellow pads and checked them off as if that could make any of it feel completed. On a Sunday when the sky couldn't decide between rain and sun, I saw the white van idling at the end of the street. It made 3 attempts at courage, then turned and left. I don't know if it was him. I don't care. Some stories come back for one last lap around the block. You don't need to stand on the porch to applaud. A month after separation papers, my wife sent me an email that felt like a college admissions essay. It had structure. It admitted fault. It offered extra credit. In paragraph 5 she wrote about staying friendly with Rick in a healthy way, because he understood a part of her no one else did. I reread it twice to make sure the word really was friendly. Then I replied with a sentence I wrote all day and showed to no one. I won't share my marriage with a third person, even as a ghost. The next morning I told my lawyer to move forward. Finalizing a divorce at 45 doesn't look like a movie montage. It looks like clicking DocuSign while the dog whines to go out. We split the house proceeds, her keeping a little more equity because she wanted the townhouse near Emma's campus and I wanted a number that made the budget spreadsheet stop coughing. I kept the Subaru and my tools. She kept the Honda and the good blender we argued about for a week and I do not miss. I wrote down the garbage day and the filter schedule for the HVAC like I was handing off a life to the next shift. The kids adjusted in ways that made me proud and sad at once. Emma asked normal things like whether I had a plunger. Please don't ask why. And I said yes too. Max started texting me starting lineups from soccer and Dad, this meme is you with a picture of a labeled pantry. My phone buzzed with a rhythm that felt like home relearning my number. I rented a modest place with a patch of yard and a kitchen that made me feel like I could start over without pretending it was an upgrade. I bought one good pan and a cast iron skillet and a coffee maker that makes exactly 2 mugs. I slept like a person who had been holding a heavy box and finally put it down. I did not cry in a cinematic way. I cried like a dad at a stoplight at 9:30 on a Tuesday with wipers that needed replacing. It was fine. Passed. I made a note to buy wiper blades. Dana messaged one more time months later to say she filed and their kids were doing therapy that involved coloring and breathing and words for big feelings. She thanked me for not making it worse. I said thank you for the same. We did not become friends. We are a short, strange footnote in each other's biographies. People ask if I'm dating. The short answer is no, not really, and the long answer is I'm dating the idea of being someone I like to sit with. I walk at night and listen to podcasts about people who restore things. Old cars, old houses, old recipes. I find that helpful. I learned to change the wax ring on a toilet and felt like I'd fixed something no one else could have. I bought a second set of sheets because I am apparently a man who rotates linens now. I make a decent chili. It's too spicy, but I'm the only one who has to say so. I ran into my ex-wife at the grocery store once. The aisle of cleaning supplies, which fits if you believe in narrative symmetry. We did the small talk dance. She looked tired in a way I recognized and hated recognizing. She asked if I was okay. I said yes in a tone truth could live in. She said she was too. We stood there for a second and then moved on without trying to summarize ourselves. Not everything is a speech. I thought that would be the end of the story. Boy meets doorbell camera. Boy loses marriage. Boy gains a coffee maker he actually likes. But life has an intermission and a second act if you stick around. The townhouse needed work. The previous tenant was a plant enthusiast with a grudge against drains. I replaced a P-trap that had grown stalactites, reseated a toilet, discovered a bird's nest in the dryer vent, and caught myself humming while I worked. The humming made me uncomfortable at first, like I was betraying something, then made me feel like a man who owns his hours. Emma started coming by on Sundays with a sack of laundry and a list of adult questions. We folded shirts and talked about the kind of people who are worth your time. I said pick the ones who know how to apologize without using the word if. She wrote it in her notes app like I was a podcast she liked. Max stayed every other weekend. We cooked huge breakfasts, which means I flipped pancakes while he ate bacon straight from the paper towel. We watched soccer and he explained tactics like I hadn't been a person with eyes for 45 years. It was perfect. At work, I stopped volunteering for the projects that require living in your inbox after 6 p.m. I learned to say, that's not in my bandwidth right now, which felt like a magic trick you should only try after you've already made yourself useful. My boss didn't fire me. He said, good, then handed me a project that fit the hours I was willing to give. I slept better knowing I'd drawn a line and the world hadn't ended. One evening, the HOA chair from our old neighborhood called to ask if I could look at a light that kept tripping the breaker in the clubhouse. I said sure, out of habit, then stood in my kitchen holding my keys and wondering if I wanted to. I went anyway because the dog needed a ride with the windows down and I needed to prove to myself that the past can be a location and not a spell. The light was fine. The breaker was old. I swapped it out and stayed to drink lukewarm water from a paper cone and listen to small talk about the pool schedule. On my way out, I saw Rick. He was dropping off a rental application for one of the duplexes down the block. He looked like a man who had been inside a tumble dryer for a long cycle. He didn't see me. I sat in my car and didn't do anything noble. I just watched him go inside and waited a minute before backing out. I didn't want a conversation where two people pretend to be better men than they are. The seasons turned twice. I kept waiting for the sting to show up on the anniversary of big days. Our wedding, the day the doorbell chimed, but the ache preferred random Tuesdays. Grief is rude like that. I learned to let it pass through without offering it a chair. I tried a date. A friend from work set me up with her cousin who liked hiking and quiet. We took our dogs to a park that smelled like pine and damp earth. We traded histories like you pass salt across a table, careful, helpful. She asked what my marriage had taught me, and I said that pretending is more expensive than honesty. She nodded and didn't press. We walked until the dogs got bored, and then we did too. We said we'd do it again. Maybe we will. The absence of urgency felt like a gift. Money, which had been a wall of dread in my mind for months, turned out to be a manageable hill. The QDRO hit, the retirement split did what math does, and the budget app stopped warning me like a smoke detector with a low battery. I swapped the cable bundle for a streaming setup that costs less and gives me more soccer than I need. I started cooking in bulk on Sundays like a dad with a plan, because I am a dad with a plan. Chili, chicken thighs, pork shoulder that makes the house smell like you've accomplished something even if you didn't. Dana and I crossed paths once more at a school fundraiser for her kids. She was running a table selling raffle tickets with the mechanical skill of someone who needed the focus. We said hi. We asked about jobs and kids and sleep. We didn't mention him or her. It was the kind of mercy I wish more people practiced. The mercy of not making each other rebleed. Every so often, late on a Thursday, my phone will buzz with an old number that my brain still knows before my eyes do. I don't answer. I listen to the voicemail if there is one. Sometimes there's just silence. Sometimes it's a pocket dial and I hear the sound of a TV in the background and a voice I used to expect at my table. I delete them. I don't save ghosts. The dog learned the route to a field behind the high school where teenagers practice plays until the dark shoos them home. We go there when the sky looks like it wants to impress someone. I throw the ball. He brings it back 3 times. Then he lies down like a rug that got bored in the wrong room. I scratch his ears and tell him he's a good boy because he is, and I am, too, most days, and that's worth saying out loud. The thing I didn't expect is how much of my life was already waiting for me on the other side of a decision I was afraid to make. The friends who knew how to show up did. The ones who only knew how to text memes drifted to the edge, and I didn't run after them. My parents, who have been married since gas was cheap, did not say I told you so or how could she. They brought over a casserole and my dad fixed a loose hinge and my mom cried in the bathroom. I love them for all of it. Max's team made the playoffs and I watched him run like his legs had been loaned to him by a gazelle with a sense of humor. Emma changed her major and apologized like she dented my car. I told her to go dent the world a little and report back. She laughed and hugged me in the way you only get to if you didn't try to be her friend when she needed you to be her dad. On the exact day the court mailed the final decree, the Ring app pinged. I was at the townhouse, sitting at my table, signing for a package with a new skillet that promised to be forged in American iron, like a superhero origin story. The alert said motion at the driveway. For a second my chest remembered the old panic. I opened the feed. A neighbor's cat walked across the frame and sat down to lick a paw with the kind of focus usually reserved for bomb defusal. I laughed alone in my kitchen in a way that felt like closing a door no one else could see. If there's a moral, it's smaller than I'd planned and better for it. Hire the lawyer before you throw the plate. See your doctor. Keep your kids out of the blast radius. Let the facts do the heavy lifting. Sleep somewhere your heartbeat doesn't have to argue with itself. Be gentle with yourself in the boring ways. Water, decent food, a walk, a list you can win. When the ring chimes at 3 p.m., it might be a van or it might be the cat. Either way, you have a life to live. I still alphabetize the spices. I still pick the fastest Costco line. I keep the blazer my ex left behind because it's allowed to be complicated and because once, on a good day, she was the person I loved most. I'm not polishing that into fiction. I'm just not letting it write the next chapter. Friday nights are for soccer or a movie old enough to know how to end. Saturday mornings are for coffee on the back step while the sun works on the frost. Sundays, if Emma isn't around and Max is with his mom, I cook too much and portion it into containers like a man making promises to his future self. I keep one light on in the living room, a warm pool in a quiet house. Sometimes I read. Sometimes I just sit and listen to the refrigerator hum and the dog sigh. It doesn't sound like much. It sounds like peace. The last time I saw Rick was in a hardware aisle, both of us staring at a wall of sandpaper like there would be an answer in the grits. He caught my eye, opened his mouth, and then closed it. I nodded once like two men acknowledging weather. He nodded back. We reached for different grades and walked away. I left with 220 and a sense that some surfaces do smooth out if you don't keep picking at them. I'm telling this not because I think I did it perfectly. I didn't. I had days where I argued with voices that weren't in the room and lost anyway. I'm telling it because someone out there has a gate latch that sticks and a camera that pings and a sinking feeling and wonders if there's anything on the other side but ruin. There is. It looks like Tuesday night pasta that you cooked yourself. It looks like a budget spreadsheet that adds up. It looks like your kid sending you a meme and your dog snoring and your phone sitting face up because it's just a phone. It looks like you, 45, older than you meant to be and somehow exactly right, flipping off the porch light before bed and sleeping. And if someday I meet someone who laughs quietly and walks their dog the exact speed mine likes, maybe I'll ask if she wants coffee that's too strong. Maybe she'll say yes. Maybe she'll say no. I'll be fine either way. I've learned to be a man who can sit with his own company and not check the driveway for something to be afraid of. That is a bigger victory than the one I wanted. It's the one I needed. The Ring app still lives on my phone. I don't hate it. It didn't lie. It just told me the truth before I was ready to hear it. Now it mostly tells me when the delivery guy drops off dog food or when the wind convinces a branch to try comedy in front of the lens. When it pings, I glance, then I go back to whatever I was doing. Cooking, texting a kid, stirring a pot, living. I'm 45. I have a labeled pantry and a dog that thinks I'm a genius and kids who know they can call me at midnight. I have a couch that is finally broken in just right. I have peace I didn't know I was allowed to order. That's my story. That's enough for tonight.